Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this horror movie review as part of my 31 Horror Movies in May series. So today we're going to take a look at kind of a cult classic. I think an underrated movie from the late 80s. It doesn't get talked about a whole lot, and that is Maniac Cop from 1988. So, yeah, Maniac Cop's the movie I'm going to review. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Set up premise and cast, and I'll get into my thoughts and review, which will be spoiler free. So yeah, Maniac Cop is a 1988 American action slasher film directed by William Lutzik, written by Larry Cohen. Um, so the movie's about a murderous ex-police officer returned from the dead and seeks revenge on the people who wronged him. It is the first installment in the Maniac Cop series. So the film opens in New York City. A waitress on her way home is assaulted by two muggers and seeks aid from a police officer who breaks her neck. Over the next two nights, this maniac cop commits more murders, prompting Lieutenant McCrae, who was told by his superiors to suppress eyewitness accounts that the killer was wearing a police uniform to pass on information to a journalist in an attempt to protect civilians. This causes panic and dissent among the city and results in an innocent patrolman either being shot to death or avoided on the streets by people afraid of them being the maniac cop. Ellen Forrest, suspecting that her husband Jack may be the maniac cop, follows him to a motel and catches him in bed with a fellow officer, Teresa Mallory. Distraught, Ellen runs out of the room and is slain by the killer. Jack is arrested under suspicion of murder, but McCrae believes Jack has been framed. McCrae gets Jack to tell him about the relationship with Mallory, who is attacked by the maniac cop while working undercover as a prostitute. Mallory and McCrae fight off the killer, who's deathly cold even through his gloves and does not appear to breathe. When they shoot him several times, the killer appears unfazed. So that's kind of the setup and the premise of the movie Maniac Cop here. I really enjoy this movie. I'll just give you the cast quick. Of course, we have Bruce Campbell as Officer Jack Forrest, Tom Atkins as Lieutenant Frank McCrae, Lauren Landon as Officer Teresa Mallory, Robert Zadar as Officer Matt Cordrell, the Maniac Cop, Richard Roundtree as Commissioner Pike William Smith, or I'm sorry, is Richard Roundtree as Commissioner Pike and William Smith as Captain Ripley. So yeah, I really enjoy this film. It's just a fun watch for me. I've seen it a couple times before watching it most recently for this review, and I just really remember watching it, or I remember watching it too, but I really remember liking this film. Even though it doesn't completely work as a horror movie, at least in a traditional sense, but we'll kind of get into that with my review here. So, starting with the pros, and you got to start with Robert Zadar as Matt Cordrell, the maniac cop. He's really good in this role. He was basically made for this role, both in terms of his look and also in terms of his action. He's very scary and a very convincing villain the way that he plays this role. The scars on his face are really effective, and just his overall physique with his large head and facial features. Yeah, just a perfect casting for this particular role. If you don't believe him as the villain, it's not believable, and the movie's not going to work. So yeah, definitely a big pro there. And then I really like the grimy New York setting that most of this movie takes place in. It's very 80s feeling, very good use of the streets and the buildings in New York City. It just kind of has that sort of a comfort feel almost, an atmosphere with that setting. It's hard to explain, but especially in the 80s, I really enjoyed the New York setting and sort of the grimy feel of all of it. So that really works well for me. There's a lot more to this movie than just a rogue cop that kills people. That really must be said. That this movie has some layers to it. It has some character development to it, some character background. From the investigative mystery standpoint that takes place to a character study standpoint and some fun twists and turns. I really enjoy how this movie was presented to us. It's not just some random cop that goes ape shit and ends up murdering everybody. But there's a reason for it. There's a reason this guy has kind of been let down, who ends up being the maniac cop, was once a good cop and he was let down by like the mayor of the city and the judicial system, and um, sort of set up to be killed in essence, and he kind of seeks revenge from beyond the grave, if you will, and it's just a very interesting backstory for that character. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, how this movie was presented with that backstory and premise. The way they shoot the movie with keeping the Maniac Cop's face hidden for the majority of the movie was, as it relates to like lighting and shadows as well as overhead shots they take of New York City. Very effective, great camera work and cinematography in this movie. I think it really holds up well. Solid directing by William Lutzik as well, especially for being a lower budget movie that didn't have a large release across the country. And this movie was only made for about $1 million or so. They really did a good job of presenting the vision and in this movie that really spoke to and speaks to a lot of people, while having thriller and horror elements and a nice story in the movie as well. So it's just a nice sort of package with a lower budget movie. So I think the other performers as well, besides Robert Zadar, do a good job. I mean, you have Bruce Campbell and Tom Atkins in this movie, two horror legends. I also think Landon does a pretty good job as well as Officer Teresa Mallory. So yeah, I think the performances are pretty good. It's great to see Bruce Campbell and Tom Atkins together in the same movie. They portray their characters very well, and they give the audience characters to follow that are relatable, not necessarily likable, but at least relatable and understandable to sort of view the story through. That we ultimately come to care about these characters, so that really works well. It's a very fun action pack. There's a lot of very fun action pack scenes throughout the movie, especially towards the end of the movie. This movie kind of has two halves to it. Like the first half of the movie, I would say is more slasher related, more horror related in terms of just the atmosphere and the killings that take place. And then I think the second half of the movie, when it gets more into like sort of an investigative mystery, and then it kind of turns into more of a much more action packed movie towards the end of the movie. But it really works overall for what this movie is going for. I think there's just a lot of different elements in this movie, but I think it comes together and it works really well with Lutzik's directing with this movie. So yeah, I really enjoy Maniac Cop. It's just a really fun watch. It's a well paced movie. It's never boring. It moves. It's a solid, efficient, tight 88-minute movie. And it really holds up well today, I feel like. So those are my pros for the movie. There are a couple of cons, and these cons are more related to the fact that this is a horror movie channel that I'm doing this review for. So there's not necessarily a lot wrong with a couple of these things, but there is a lot less horror in the second half of the movie. It turns into more of a mystery action filled movie, as I said, which is fun. But as I said, I'm reviewing this on a horror channel. So for some horror fans, it might not be the greatest thing that there's not really a lot of horror towards the second half of the movie, even though in general as a movie it really holds up well. Some of the special effects and makeup effects used in the movie haven't aged all that well. They don't really look all that great. You can kind of tell there's some fake and some bad effects going on, especially as time goes on. So that's one thing that caught my eye. The score and the soundtrack's definitely more of an action cop movie score than it is a horror movie score, even earlier in the movie, which that's not a huge con. It's just something I wanted to bring up as part of my review for this movie because, again, I'm reviewing this on a horror review channel. It's not overly scary, and the kills aren't overly creative or groundbreaking. Although there is some bloody parts to some of the kills into this movie. And then finally, another con, I'll say that the other acting outside of the four main characters that I mentioned, from the Maniac Cop and the three leads, isn't really the best, especially by like the other cops and some of the other figures in this movie. Even the mayor, I wasn't all that convinced about the guy that played the mayor. So those are some cons that I have for the movie. But overall, I really enjoy Maniac Cop. I'm glad that I have it in my collection. I think it works really well. Now this version of that I have though isn't anything special. It's just a DVD copy. it really only has, as far as special features, it really only has like a scene index and the ability to play the movie. There's not even a theatrical trailer, but that's okay for me. I just really enjoy watching the movie. Like I said, anytime you get Bruce Campbell and Tom Atkins on screen, along with Robert Zadar and his in this villain role for him, it's that's all the entertainment that I need really. And it does have some nice twists and turns. One of the main leads doesn't make it all the way through the movie, which I really wasn't expecting. And again, I enjoy the sort of the mystery aspect to it as well as the earlier horror elements to it. I think it works really well, especially in that '80s New York City setting. So overall, I think I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. I really enjoy it as an '80s, sort of a lower budget '80s cult. It's got definitely got a cult following, kind of a lesser known horror movie from the '80s, though, and I think it works well for what it is. 8 out of 10 is my rating for this movie. Go ahead and comment down below if you guys have seen Maniac Cop from 1988, what your thoughts are about it. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Why not? Please like this video and hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my great horror content or any of my great videos for this series. And please subscribe to my channel down below so you don't miss any of my great horror content I have coming up throughout the rest of the year. So yeah, that's my review for Maniac Cop. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay scared. Bye.